Okay, howdy, hi. Good day to you, whatever time of day it is, whenever you happen to be watching this. It is early in the day still. It's like the middle of the day. It's early in the day for me. I wanted to just clarify again, as I have in prior videos, but this isn't tarot. This is oracle. I use some tarot cards. I do use tarot cards, and I'm aware of the meanings of them to some degree. But what I'm doing isn't tarot. What I'm doing is oracle. Which I can do off of anything. It's just nice doing it off of the tarot cards, because they already have so many different, very specific meanings. And I did study symbology for a short time in my early 20s. So a lot of it resonates with me. However, I've never studied tarot, so a lot of it also doesn't resonate with me, at least the way that like it would with another tarot reader. What I'm doing is taking from my own experiences, taking from my own concepts of things, and then just using these things as a guide. And I can use anything. This just always ends up being the easiest. I actually had a consideration to use something else. Hold on. Okay. I think I personally really am given to the cards because of being an artist. It's nice to have a definitive picture to look at and then to pull from. But I can do an oracle off of anything. And to show that, I actually have these cards, so I guess I'll do a different reading of it. But I'm just going to use the first thing I grabbed, which was all of this change that I have. And I'm going to do an oracle off of this money. I can do an oracle off of anything. This just happened to be the thing closest to me. I haven't practiced necessarily with anything outside of the fact that in my day-to-day life for an extremely long time, I've pulled out of my experiences and learned to pull out of my experiences, and everything becomes some form of sign or symbol that can be pulled from. Now, I also had to learn over time how to not be given to that, otherwise I would have become absolutely delusional. That everything but I do think that all things are connected, and that we do have the capacity to be able to do those things. So I think anybody could do what I do, to be honest, and it would all come out differently because everybody's different. It's a personal thing. So like everything that I talk about is coming from my personal aspect and just my personal experiences and belief systems, and has my personal bias on it. And nothing I say is supposed to be taken as the gospel truth. I mean, take whatever you want as the gospel truth. I do try to speak the good news. I do try to speak good news. I do try to alchemize everything into something positive. I do try to teach, people to clear negativity, to empower themselves, to embrace their power, to come into connection with their highest power, to connect with others in that way, and to use their personal experiences as a source of education and connection and the betterment for all. But that's what I'm doing. That is what this is. So this may be an example, or it may just be an encouragement. I know a lot of people hear like oracle reading or tarot cards or see any of these things, and they're immediately like, what, are you fucking nuts? Are you, you're one of those people? You're a bit delusional, you're a crazy person. For me, I was raised religiously, and I very much was given to it. I very much did actually believe those things. And so I learned growing up the power of prayer, and I believed in these other beings that were outside of myself and outside of even reality itself, and controlling all things, and they had real names and real forms that they took, and that all these things were very real. As an adult, I don't believe that. As an adult, I believe that everything is essentially a figment of our imaginations. that we're all just the collective figment of God's imagination. We're all just in one singular AI mind, computing as we've been programmed to. But I also think that there is like a connection to something outside of ourselves, even just each other. Like it creates this whole, I believe in quantum mechanics, I believe in physics, I believe in mathematics, but I also believe that those things are limited, and that there is an experience of the experience of these things that has its own significance, and thus manifestation of itself in these different sorts of ways. So like, although I don't know what I actually, like how I would definitively actually define a lot of different like spiritual things, a lot of different like, what's it called, supernatural type things, I would define it just as that. It's supernatural. It goes beyond what is at least perceived to be natural. And I think so much really does come down to a matter of our perception. The more I open my perception to be able to receive grander and grander ideas into my simple reality, the more grand my reality becomes. So, you know, I do see it all quite scientifically. I don't actually believe, like, you know, I pray to my ancestors, but my ancestors are actually just me. They're all of the experiences and experiences of those experiences that led to me being who I am. Those people don't exist anymore. Any of them that have passed on, anybody that's dead is dead. They're gone. They don't exist anymore, but they exist through me. So they do continue to exist because I exist. And, you know, I think that that's the way that things continue to work. It's not that matter can be created or destroyed, it's that it changes form. And I think that's the power of knowing yourself, is because you can tap into those things. And by tapping into those things, you can actually tap into history throughout all time and space. You can tap into anything that's ever existed, or that will exist even. That one's a little harder of a process because it takes being able to visualize those things a certain way and kind of remove yourself from yourself. First, you know yourself so that you can know where you've come from, and then you remove yourself from yourself so that you can know where you're going. Because none of those things are set in stone the same way the stuff in the past was, right? But that's just the math of things. So, like, I try to look at things very simply, but when I'm doing these types of things, this type of work, like, I am kind of letting myself get into the spiritual aspect. Spirituality, like the spiritual aspect being like a non-physical, it's tangible to some degree, but it's more like a psychological, emotional state. And kind of like it's like a memory. When you're remembering something, even when you're remembering it like as if you were right there again, you know, like I have PTSD. I have some triggers, but I don't always struggle with it too terribly anymore. But there's been times where it's been so bad that I literally have had flashbacks where, like, although part of me is aware that I'm specifically somewhere else, my consciousness will, like, have me remembering so vividly that it will literally feel like I'm in that time and place all over again. And it'll bring up all of these different feelings and fears and all the different stuff that I experienced back then too. I've gotten much better about it as I went to a specialist and did EDMR therapy, where I learned how to be able to go back into my experiences in a safe and confident way, and to be able to engage with my memories in a way where I'm not continuing to be victimized by them. It's a huge, very, very, very valuable skill for those with PTSD to learn. And it took a lot of time, but that's why I'm not constantly, like, suffering from my PTSD that way. I struggle. I still do struggle. I still have plenty of triggers, especially when it comes to personal relationships. It's also why I tend to isolate a lot. But it's not like it has been in the past, and that's because I've done a certain work. And in the same sort of way, like I became aware that like the way that the human mind works and how crazy it is, because like I'd be like, okay, I know I'm here in Wisconsin, but I literally felt like I was back in Baltimore, to the point where looking around the room that I was sitting in Wisconsin that looked nothing like where I was in Baltimore, it not only looked like it smelled like it felt like it. You could hear the people in Baltimore in it. Like, it was very... Flashbacks are crazy. They're really crazy. But, so it shows me the power of my mind, right? To be able to just, like, completely ignore reality and dictate itself based off of memory. And so all things feel like memory that way. You know, they feel like this visualization, and like even if you're not actually in it, it feels very real. So it's still something that can be pulled from. It's like kind of like, you know, like people talk about like the astral plane and stuff like that, or people talk about Christ consciousness, or people talk about like, you know, your archangels, or like all these different types of things. I don't actually believe in those things that way, but there's a part of my brain that I allow to embrace those concepts as valid concepts in order to work with them. And I do that very much in the same way that I would EDMR therapy. I'm not going back into that memory and being like, oh shit, I actually am right here back in Baltimore having this experience. I'm aware of those things. I can completely embrace them. I can see them for what they are. I can let myself fully feel them, but I'm still consciously somehow removed from them in order to maintain a sense of control over myself, right? Because otherwise, like, those things would still have control over me and would completely overtake me. So I've learned these things, and that's why I'm able to do this work. I've watched people kind of go off the deep end with these new age type things. I say new age, but practicing tarot and oracle has been around forever. A lot of different forms of divination have been prevalent in not just pagan tradition either, even in Christian tradition for millennia. But if you don't know yourself, this is why I'm constantly talking about knowing yourself, because if you don't know yourself, like, you can lose yourself in the real world just going to work every day. You know, like, so I wouldn't recommend then, like, if you're already struggling being that type of person, if you're already struggling with those types of things, like, it may not be safe for you to indulge in any other type of dimension, you know. And maybe for me, like, it was like learning those things first that allowed me to be comfortable with these types of things and to engage with them that type of way. You know, if you're actually, like I said, like, if you're actually sitting around waiting on specific signs, you can become delusional very easily. So, like, although I do believe that that's a real reality that exists because of the manifestation of things, and that we have the capacity within ourselves, every individual does, to take from those things, I think that it's also equally as important to, like, continuously actively engage in your reality. This is coming from, like, the most isolated person I know I am. But I also get that from my other family members. My grandma was that way. My uncle was that way. My uncle was severely schizophrenic. My grandma was just a recluse. And it, you know, it just runs in the family to be a bit reclusive. I don't mind it at all. I like it. But I also like getting out and socializing. It's just a bit exhausting and intimidating. I do got the PTSD. It is intimidating. It does, you know, trigger. Getting close to people can be a trigger for me, for sure. Largely in part because those I've been closest to in my life, like my family, have done a lot to come up against me and to hurt me, and to, not just to hurt, I mean, to try to end me even, or end, like, you know, my passions, my goals, my aspirations. You know, it hasn't just been that they haven't been there to support me, or that they've always, like, you know, judged those things. they've actually like set things in place or moved things around or stolen from me in different ways or like done things to me that they hoped would like keep me from being able to reach certain points in my life. And that was just to protect themselves, you know. I get it. But like that's why I keep myself distant from them. And you know, those things can be triggering. It makes it hard to have close personal relationships because whenever people get close, that's when they start to try to take advantage. And I've just learned not to give people that space, right? So I just wanted to give a little bit of a, like, to point these things out because, like, I don't really think I look at things exactly the same way that, like, a lot of other people that do this type of stuff do. Like I said, I'm looking at it from like multiple angles at all times, and that's how I'm remaining balanced about it. But I'm also like, I don't have a hard time. Like, I have a big imagination. I'm very creative. Always have been. So like, I don't have a hard time like getting into a spiritual state, you know, in a spiritual space. And like, it's no different than like when you're meditating. You know, any human being can meditate a certain way for a certain time. It's about finding what works best for you as an individual, but can meditate for a certain place, in a certain place, for a certain time, a certain way, and reach this mental state of being both wholly grounded in oneself and also fully detached from oneself. And that to me is reaching a spiritual state. That's how, so like it is something quite scientific. And it's mostly just that you're no longer identifying with your consciousness, but you're becoming very self-aware. You're not just letting it guide you, you are becoming aware of those things, kind of guiding them. And it's a balance between all of that. You learn that you're not actually in control, but that you're in control of yourself, right? So like, I think sometimes the way that I tend to communicate, because I communicate in a way that matches what it is that I'm doing, confuses people. Same thing, like I was raised in the church and I was raised Christian, and I actually was Christian for many years, and I took it very seriously. And so often the way that I communicate, especially when I'm communicating about those types of concepts, I will communicate like a Christian does. And people will be like, you're talking like a preacher. Like, you use these words and these terms and these phrases and stuff that sounds like you're like reading out of the Bible. And like, that's because I kind of am. I did study the Bible most of my life, and you know, I've read it many times, and I've read it through all of the way from beginning to end 3 different times, which like is the only book I've done that with. I mean, I've read other books front to back, but it's the only book I've read multiple times, I believe, even like that. And the Tao Te Ching I've read, but like even The Hobbit I only read the one time. And the Bible's a very big book. There's a lot of words in there, so you know, it was a feat to some degree, but I was also studying it. You know, I wasn't just reading it to read it as a story. The last time I read it to read it as a story, and it really, every time I read it, it was something different. Every time I read it, it really changed me. It's a cool book that way, but it's also a dangerous book. You know, you gotta be aware of yourself. Any book can become a dangerous book. Fucking Catcher in the Rye, you know, for instance. Like, it's important that you know yourself so that you're not given to the power of words beyond yourself. Words are powerful, but it's whatever you make them, you know. Okay, so with that, I have this handful of change, and what I'm gonna do, get them all mixed up real nice. I'm going to lay them out. Like so. Okay. I'll show you how they're out like this. I wonder if I can. The thing is that I can't have this. I can't keep it set like this so that you can see. Do I have anything I could put that would keep it up like that. Hold on. Okay. I think that's the best I'm going to be able to get. Which is fine. Okay. Hopefully it doesn't fall, but we're going to try doing it like that. Okay. So I randomly just I laid them out like this, and so this is the way that they came out. The first thing I'm seeing is an ellipses. So we're talking about a specific cycle that has spanned for quite some time. Quite some time. And we have these two bookends, right? This one is beginning. The first thing that I noticed was that it says Monticello, just the name of this building. I never noticed that. I never really look at coins, to be honest. United States of America. Because these are the bookends, and because I'm doing this with coins, what I'm seeing is that I should really read these, at least this one, and it's going to direct me. We'll have to read both of them. This one's on tails, this one's on heads. And in order to be able to read the rest of these, okay, so it's the Five of Pentacles. It's giving me like a very grounding energy. There's a way to both see these and see me. Because I feel like the way I interact with these things is also important. Okay. So I'm getting like this grounded energy. It's giving me this feeling of like, okay, because this is way back when. And it's like, everything being built off of stone. It's like kind of this stone energy, this groundedness. It's that was the most powerful thing that we had at that time in our concepts to build, was like, you know, these giant stones. And so that became the foundation of things. And this is like the establishment of it could be civilization of itself, but it's like the establishment of a system. And that system has been going on for a long time, and it's coming to a head at the very end here. But this is kind of, this has been the process, this has been the journey. And in the beginning, it was built off of the strongest things that we had access to at that time. But even just the initial, it's kind of like the singularity, like even just the initial founding of the thing, like, did this, like, spark in time. Well, all of a sudden, everything then was able to be built off of it. And so it very quickly evolved into something so much greater. But at the time, it was its own greatest thing. And, you know, that's very much like kind of what I was talking about with like these concepts. Like, they don't have to be the highest, loftiest thing. It's not like a nickel is the most valuable thing, right? But setting a specific foundation allows for these greater things to come to pass. And it's also kind of part of that concept, like it's in the reverse. So it's also part of that concept of like taking what you know, taking the greatest thing that you know, taking what you know to be totally true and being that you're totally sure of, and letting it go. There's an episode of Adventure Time where Jake is talking to Finn, and he's like trying to, teach him about letting go, essentially. And he's like, you see this? This is my favorite mug. And then he throws it and smashes it, and he's like, and now it's broken and it's gone and it doesn't exist anymore, so I don't care about it anymore. I'll find something new to care about. And it's kind of like that. Like, it's like, this is literally the most important thing to me, but I'm getting rid of it in order to receive something even beyond that, something even greater than that. This is something that is meant a lot. This is something that, is helping found things. As I'm saying that, I'm noticing, well, I've already seen this multiple times, obviously, but on my mug, it says Henry Watson Pottery, England, founded 1800. It's the original Suffolk Tankard. The original Suffolk Tankard. The original Suffolk Tankard. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time saying that. Ideal for use at home or on a safari. It's England, founded 1800. And so we're talking about these, like, they're concepts that don't serve us any longer. There was this cycle that was started that's played itself out and come to a head and it was important for its time. It was important for the building process, but it's not the thing we're supposed to be carrying all the way through. We're actually supposed to leave it where it's at so that we can continue moving forward. And then at some point in time, this entire cycle becomes that. Just something to learn from, and then I'm going to pick up these coins and I'm going to put them back where I got them. And then they're not going to mean that anymore. That's the cool thing about Oracle, right? Is that it teaches you that, like, anything can be anything at any given time depending on how you use it. But it doesn't have to be that. Okay. So then our next coins are this dime in the upright. Okay, so we've also have these two. The way I'm going to read this, we have two rows. So we have, I'm going to read the top row, and then I'm going to let the bottom row define it. And all of these coins have one underneath them, except for this dime. And these two have this one underneath them, but the rest all have one underneath them. So I'm gonna let this tell the story. Okay, so first we're starting with this dime, and it is from 2015, and it says Liberty, right? It's the first thing I'm noticing, that it says Liberty, and that he's turned towards liberty. And so we set this strong foundation with an idea to move forward, but at the time, we couldn't really even see so far into the future. We wouldn't know how far we would come. We wouldn't know what it would look like when we would get there. We might have had ideas. I mean, the building on this nickel, is incredibly detailed and has all of these different facets and things to it. So it's not that those things didn't exist and that we couldn't see to some degree. I mean, it's like when you're doing a science project, you kind of have an idea, you have a theory and a thesis as to what's going to be happening, but you don't know for sure until you actually go through the experiments, right? And so we laid down the most solid foundation that we possibly could, and then we moved forward with this sense of freedom, with this sense of liberty. um, where it's like our first concept was that there's a freedom worth fighting for. Because liberty isn't just freedom, it's like justice. And it's the head. So it's like, we had these concepts, we had these strong concepts that we determined we were going to let guide us, and that was going to be the next step, that was the next best thing. Not the next best thing, but the next step in the process. That was what would be required of us, would be just to move forward in liberty. And that was kind of, we've already laid the foundation, but this is at the head of it. This is at the forefront of it. This is like what we hope to be the result of it, but also what we're leading the charge with. And then clarifying that, we have another nickel in reverse. This one is far clearer. And so I'm noticing that on the building, because this one's older, I'm noticing that on the building, there's these triangles. These pillars. In reverse. So there's like a definitive, as we build this, our foundation, the underlying concept that we have of liberty at this time is that you have a very specific way of doing things, that you have this straight line to follow, and that the world comes up underneath that. All of the emotions, all of the relationships, all of these different society. Society comes up and is built up underneath this like banner, shield, roof of balance. Okay, hold on. There's a couple things I want to look up. There's pillars in society, and that they're what's holding up that sense of integrity, but also that integrity is what is kind of is the point, and it's what is giving this protection and cohesion over society, if that makes sense. Also, I noticed that this coin is from 2015, which is a message to stay centered, focused, and balanced throughout current life changes, and expect solutions and answers to appear to assist you. And so we moved on faith. Like, this sense of liberty was our faith at the time. We're building something new. We're building what we know that we want. We're taking the strongest concepts that we have, the most durable things that we have, and we're building off of that because we want to see something new. And so we're moving forward in faith, and we're letting these concepts and this faith guide us, and trusting that everything will be built from the bottom up. But the bottom, because this coin is in the reverse, it's like from the bottom being like society, people, relationships, our interpersonal relationship, our emotionality, our emotional intelligence, our spirituality, that all of those things will then come to the head and bring us a sense of liberty. But we also will have that sense of liberty and faith be the guide in order to kind of cultivate those things in the first place. Also, when with this on its in the reverse, and with Monticello across the bottom of it, it makes it so that Monticello is on the top, but in the reverse. Monticello means little mountain in Italian, and so in the reverse, it's like a valley. It's like a valley, and it's kind of this idea that like being willing to. I said it in my last reading, the one about Job, where like, or maybe it was even in the reading before that. There's a sense of when you become opportunistic, like when you're trying to overcome insecurity and uncertainty, and you're embracing opportunity to move forward with confidence, even though you don't know what it is that you're doing and you're not sure that you have the skill to do it. Generally, when you brace in opportunities for alchemizing bad situations into good ones, it doesn't initially look like a whole bunch of good things. It ends up looking like embracing the negativity in order to alchemize it. You cannot alchemize the negativity without embracing the negativity. So like how I put it in the reading was like, you can't just have everything handed to you if what you're trying to do is learn how to gain those things for yourself. You have to go through that process. Okay? So we've got a strong head on our shoulders at this point. We've got a good balance. We've got a good concept moving forward. It's strong enough to continue to move forward for sure. But again, we don't know exactly how this is going to end. The next coin that we have is absolutely fucking mutilated. I don't know if you can see, but this dime is like fucking crinkle cut. It's been through it. It's been through it. And we have it on its its backside. And it's on its side. Which would make sense. The bottom of it is coming from our foundation and it's moving into the next phases of things. But like I said, like when you first embrace the idea that we're going to take all of this negativity and we're going to turn it into something good using our greatest strengths, right? The negativity just being the inevitability of uncertainty that exists within starting any sort of cycle or trying to build any sort of legacy or, trying to establish any sort of community, society. There's this inevitability of uncertainty, especially because, like, you can see that we don't have a coin here. It's actually the only space where we don't have a coin. The uncertainty was actually a very fundamental part of this process. We needed to not be able to see what was coming next and to have this point of destruction. It's like a war, a battle, at least. It's, maybe multiple battles by the looks of it. It's having been through quite a lot. Because on the back of this one, oh no, it does say one world. It's just in between these. There's a torch and two probably fig. Yeah, they're different. I think they're different. Maybe one's a fig and one's an olive branch. I don't know if that's true, but figs and olives, I was taught by a man from Iraq that Iraq, sorry, I think that's how you say it, right? That over, like, in the Middle East,
those are two extremely prominent, like basically anything, especially if you're making something of a spiritual fashion, like if you're making oils or different types of foods and stuff like that for spiritual purposes. But like generally everything is made, or like the best things are made out of olives and figs, olive trees and fig trees, and that those are like the most prevalent in those areas. Maybe they only grow in those areas even technically, or at least organically originally. And that he had taught me how to use fig leaves and olive oil in order to make a tincture, I don't know how to say that word, that is really good for massages, especially foot massages. It exfoliates, but it also has all of these different like antioxidants and healing properties and stuff like that. And he was like, it's largely in part, he said pretty much our whole diet and everything revolves around these olive trees and these fig trees, because they're so prevalent and because they've been there so long, that everything else, like if it can grow with an olive tree or a fig tree, you can know that it goes well with it. Sorry. And so it was it's that concept too, that if it grows with it, it goes with it. And this is an important lesson to take when you're founding relationships, because, well, okay, if it grows with it, it goes with it. That's not necessarily. Maybe that was the issue, because I'm thinking about it more deeply, and like that's not really necessarily true, because weeds grow up with different plants, diseases can grow up within certain plants, and that doesn't mean that they're good for the plant. You have to know what it is that's growing up with it, because actually plenty of different types of negative things grow up with things. At first I was thinking that like if you look at relationships and you can be like, well, this person is growing with me. It doesn't matter if you're even growing different ways, that as long as you're both growing together, you can know it's a healthy relationship. But that's not true. You could be growing apart, and then trying to keep that relationship is not healthy. So I think maybe that's like part of what we're seeing here too, is that in the uncertainty, we were sticking to these core values that we had and that we'd built off of, and like we crafted such very specific, strong core values that we were planning on driving us forward, and so those are the things that we have set, and we're like, okay, this is what we're going to build off of. But then immediately we come into uncertainty, and immediately we come into a whole bunch of challenges, and those core values are just not holding up the same way. There's a core of them that's holding up, but a lot of it's changing in its concepts. That's also why this coin is on its side. There's a transition. And so it's, again, being able to take from those things, but also let them become something else. Part of the healing process for me through my PTSD wasn't just being able to acknowledge that certain things had happened, being able to become very aware of what those things were. But if I would have left it just at, oh, well, now I'm a victim. Now I've been victimized. I know how I've been victimized. I know even why I've been victimized. But if everything just kept revolving around this sense of victimization, we would not have been able to move forward. We would have just fallen into this constant uncertainty. But instead, we continued to move forward. We took this as a transition. We took these concepts and we made something else out of them. So like, yeah, that's why the torch is in the middle of the two. As much as figs and olives go together, and so many other things that could grow alongside those things are definitive of working together and being able to create a community, because they all grow up and develop within the same area by the same, you're receiving the same sunlight, you're receiving the same earth, you're receiving the same rain, and you're all growing together. That's a good sign. But then there's this torch in between that was kind of like, we have to be willing to burn certain bridges in order to get where we're actually going, because some of these bridges are just bringing us back around to somewhere we don't want to be. Okay, so then we're moving forward into this penny that is in the reverse. It's dirty as hell, but it's from 2022. 2022, yeah. So it's not that old, but it's not that old, but it's been beaten. So here's another concept. I wish that you could see it better. Here's another concept too, is that like these were old concepts. I don't know, when is this coin from? Yeah, shit, this dime's from 1965. So these are old concepts. But this isn't an old penny. This is even a fairly new penny. It's only a couple years old. But it's been through a lot. It's pretty damaged. It's scratched up. It's taken quite a beating. So we move through this uncertainty. We start taking things. So now this is, instead of, it was important, it was essential that we built off of these concepts, that we first set in place a very strong foundation to build off of, and then had these high concepts that we could validate within society, and that we moved forward in that. But immediately we came to find that those concepts were a little too high. They weren't totally stable. This foundation wasn't fully stable. This nickel's upside down. So like I said, it's that concept of a valley instead of a mountain. You know, these things ultimately weren't serving where it was that we were trying to head. But we needed to learn these things in order to get to where we're going. Many of the things that we have experienced in our lives that have led to different forms of trauma, different forms of PTSD, different forms of struggle and victimization, aren't what we're meant to carry forward into the future. But they served us for the time that they existed, and it's important for us to take of those things, to do the battle, to go through that process, to go through that growth, and then to be willing to burn certain bridges in order to move forward. Those things were still essential. Just because they don't exist in the current and won't exist in the future doesn't mean that they weren't essential for their time and space. Those things were extremely valuable. This nickel is just as valuable as this nickel. This dime is just as valuable as this dime. But in their position, in time and space, they served what they served when they served it. In the same sort of way, you know, if I haven't eaten for 4 days and have $1, that dollar can serve me to get food that sustains me and literally saves my life. I've had dollar bills literally save my life before. But I've also had times of abundance where I could easily, oh, that's just an extra $1 more, that's fine. Oh, you just need an extra $1, just give it away. Lose $1 and don't even think twice about it. You know, the value of something isn't just innate. It is. Those dollars still were $1. You know, it held that inherent value. But it's even beyond that to the value that they serve as you use them. If when I hadn't eaten for 4 days and I found $1, if instead of spending that on food, I paid somebody to buy 3 cigarettes of theirs because I figured that would actually, then I wouldn't have to eat, and then I'd have 3 cigarettes for the day because I'm addicted to cigarettes, like that ultimately wouldn't serve me the same. So it's about what you do with these things too, right? And so we're finding that because like we go from having 10 pennies right here in this dime, even though this dime is absolutely obliterated, it still has the value of 10 pennies. Even though this penny is bright and shiny and nice, this penny is fucking 50 years older, 70 years older. 70 years older than this one. This one is 70 years older than this one. I mean, this one is 70 years newer. But it's still 10 times less valuable than this one. However, just because this one's all sorts of torn up and fucked up and been through some things, that doesn't make it any less valuable than this one, or this one, or this one, or this one. Okay, so it's all, everything is both. Everything is always bothing. It always has, it's never just so black and white. And when it is, like just in my Hermetic deck, like even when it is black and white, it's extremely complex. The only way you can actually break things down into black and white is when you're willing to embrace the complexities of those things. So you always have to kind of be open to receiving, you know, more out of those things. So we have this penny, and like we feel like we've been degraded. We just went through this battle, you know, went through all of these different things, and now we have like nothing left. We had 10 pennies. Now we have one singular penny, and it ain't looking in the best shape either. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter, because this is the opportunity that was meant to found the rest of everything. These things were essential to get to this point, but this is actually our starting point, and we're starting from the very bottom up. And that's because this foundation truly didn't serve us. It served us. It did what it needed to do, but it wasn't the strong foundation that we needed to get to where we're going. So you have to be willing to let things go and to move forward, even if what you're receiving on the other side seems to be significantly less. Because as we can see, we're able to look into the future because we're seeing everything laid out. In our tangible, you know, day-to-day lives, it never appears to be that way, of course, you know. So like, it's about being able to, we don't see the future. We can see it right here, but like we have to be able to trust that like there's more ahead of us and there's more to come, and that the reason that we're receiving so little is to create these extremely fundamental strengths within ourselves. And that's why like it's being clarified here by this quarter. You know, this is more than 2 times greater than what we just left behind. You know, it's also a more solid coin, and in much better condition, even though this one's not much older. This one's 9 years younger than this coin. This one's 74. So 11 years. I'm bad at math. I think I'm doing it backwards. So our foundation, although we have just a penny, we've been reduced to just a shitty penny. Okay. We have this strong foundation. This is stronger than any of the other foundations we've had thus far. And this is our starting point to move forward into the rest of everything. And in this foundation, it also has liberty, but liberty is actually at the base and is in the reverse. So we've learned through this process to not fight for what we believe in when it comes to being stubborn about concepts. We've learned to embrace that things aren't always what they seem, and that there's a value in even releasing things, having to leave things behind. There's a value even in having very little. There's a value in having nothing at all. This penny being on its head as well. So when this penny is on its head, it's facing to the left. And when this quarter is on its head, it's facing to the right. And so although it's still in the reverse, what it's showing us is it's kind of like giving me the hangman card, the hangman energy in tarot. We put ourselves into certain positions in order to see things better. And so like that was the issue with this here. Yes, we've been completely reduced to nothing, and in this penny we are still looking back at that. But our foundation is moving us forward. Now we're starting to look ahead. We've been able to take those experiences, apply them, learn from them, and now we're moving forward. Okay, so what are we moving forward into? Well, now we have what we originally started with. Now we have this liberty. It's the same thing, the same way. This coin's from 1979. Good year. So we have the same thing we started off with, but this time It's not as bright and shiny, but that's because it's fundamentally more sound. I think even, I don't know for sure because I don't know much about coins, but I think that this coin actually has a different elemental quality to it than this one does. I think that this one has more, I don't want to say whatever these coins are made out of because I forget. Nickel isn't just nickel. I think pennies are all copper. I learned that they were copper, but like I think that there's, like there used to be silver in coins and there isn't silver in them anymore. There used to be silver in quarters, I think. I don't know for sure. And I don't know what these are made out of. But I think that this coin is made out of something different from this coin because this coin was made in 79 and this coin was made in 2015. I could be mistaken, but that's what I think. And just the way that they are weathered and stuff is a bit different. What I'm noticing too is that, like, okay, so it's essentially the same thing, but they actually do look very different, not just because of the age of them, you know, not just because this one's been around longer now, it's taken on more, it probably has a higher value because of that to some degree, but the printing process itself changed over time to the point where there's more details and there's like different shapes and stuff in this one than there is in this one. And I'm assuming that this one is actually technically just a copy of this one. And if you've ever copied something, you'll realize that like even as closely as you can copy it, it starts to take on these slight little differences. Same thing as any form of cloning. So this one is a clone of this one, right? Technically. And because of that, it has this difference. They look like the same guy because they're both on a 10. I mean, because they're both on a dime. They're supposed to be the same person. And maybe in part it's because of the weathering. I mean, they look similar, but at the same time, like, there's these very, very subtle, slight differences just because of the printing and because of the aging. Where, like, this could very well be that dude's father. Like, it isn't technically the same. And so it's matured in this way as well. It's not this high-headed sense of liberty and freedom of, you know, let's say, for instance, when the U.S. first started and we were like, every man is created equal, while we actively had slaves and wouldn't let them vote. Okay, now we've come through this. Now we can say every man is equal, and when we say that, we mean it, sort of deal, right? We've come a long way. The way that this is set up, these two are together, and they're being clarified by this quarter. So next to that concept, we have this 2020 penny. Also with this dime, so like our most valuable, after everything that we've learned and after through these processes of coming to this point, the most valuable thing that we've learned thus far has been in being able to look back and then take from that and move forward. And now because of that, we're receiving this penny where it's like essentially this, only it's been turned all the way around, it's been refreshed, it's looking in the right direction now it's looking forward, and so it's in this looking back and being able to take from these things, but then go through this process of being able to make the most of them and setting these proper steady foundations that we've been able to move forward into something much more pure, much more positive, you know. And now we're able to look forward. I'm also seeing that there's a D underneath the date. D is the fourth number, the fourth letter in the alphabet, the 26th alphabet. So, I believe it's 26. It's been a minute since I've been in school. being the fourth is a symbol of completion, that the cycle has come full circle. Everything has come full circle at this point. And so this is our base foundation, but this isn't what's actually being seen. In the same way that this was our base foundation and this is what we actually started to build with, this is our base foundation and this is what we're actually starting to build with, which is really nice to see, because what we're building with isn't just a singular basic something. It's a new outlook on life, because we're able to continually consider where we've come from, where we've been, and what we've learned from that. And we've tied them both together. And they're being clarified by this quarter that was slightly on its side. It's on its back as well, right? And it's pointing, the head of it is pointing towards our base foundation. As an eagle, it's also a sense of independence. Eagles tend to isolate themselves up into the mountains. They're also scavengers. So it's kind of this concept of, being able to take what was considered one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? And like, this is, in being, all of these being circles, like they're portals, but like, it's a sense of coming full circle in this concept of a scavenger, of becoming a true alchemist, being able to become a true alchemist. I'm actually like, I could read from coins from now on, to be honest, because I'm noticing all these different things that I could also read the deeper that I get into it, but that's what I've got for here. Okay, so now we've reestablished a foundation. And this one is looking at both sides. It's got this whole new balance. This is like also like a quarter, right? So this is a very strong, durable, this is the highest of the coins. The regular coins, we have $50. We actually have a lot of different coins, but like, this is the highest of the main coins. This is the most stable energy that way. We also have 36 between them, and 3 sixes is a symbol of hope. It's a symbol of enlightenment. It's a symbol of being able to alchemize, this is looking back at this thing that initially felt like it wasn't enough, and it felt very dark, and it felt very like lacking, because it was like, how did we go from everything that we've had to this? How were we in the light and now we're in the darkness? But 3 sixes is the sign of being able to find a light through the darkness, being able to, the light in the darkness is the fact that you already know that there is a light and can move out of it. It's a period of time, and it's essential. It's essential. When you come out of the darkness, everything is so bright, and it can even be blinding. When you first go into the darkness, everything is so dark that you can't see anything. So there's this process of embracing a fear of uncertainty, which we've also learned through this, right? And that's why this one now is down here, because this just came after uncertainty. This came after uncertainty, our foundations, but we're looking back onto our foundation, and we're recognizing that like those things were all essential as we move forward. Okay, then we have this interesting little guy. He's from 96, which is the year that my golden birthday was. 96 is like a super significant year for me. I was 6. No, my golden birthday actually was in 95. I turned 6 in 95, and then was 6 throughout 96. Now that I think of it. but my 6th birthday was my golden birthday. And again, there's a whole bunch of 6s, right? So we're denoting something that could have felt evil, something that was very dark, something that felt controlling. When the Bible uses the number 666, it's in reference to the Antichrist, and it's in reference to him becoming the, that figurehead of Armageddon, essentially, or the process of Armageddon. And 6 is, in of itself, like if 5 is a pentacle, 6 is a pentacle on its head. It's the reverse of that. And so it's kind of chaos. 1996 has this feeling of chaos for me. But it also has this like really deep nostalgia. And like given everything that we've been through, it is denoting like a PTSD, like a very specific trauma. But it's also denoting like at that exact simultaneously, or very closely related to it. Maybe turning 6 in 95 was actually the trauma. The trauma was there at that time, but that was just 2 months prior. My birthday's in November, so that was just 2 months prior to it becoming 1996. And so like whatever I learned in 95 in turning 6 is what I was able to apply to being 6 throughout 1996. So, this penny is actually, it's in really good condition as far as like the definitiveness of it. It isn't worn, but it's very dark and worn that way. Like, and it has, I don't know, it's not going to come up in the thing. It's very, very dark, and then like you can tell like these parts that are lighter are from being rubbed and touched. So like it's almost like in its earliest time, like back when it first became a coin, it went through something that really darkened it, that oxidized it, I guess, really darkened it and made it very dark, and then over time that's been being worn off as it's been being used. Well, this says that 1996 may indicate that something in your life is about to leave or come to an end and will be replaced with something better. Reveals that most of your battles that you face in life are either won or lost in your head, and your mentality is everything. And that's pretty solid. I think that's pretty solid. So what I'm also getting then from this is that now that we have this solid foundation and are moving forward, that we're being reminded, not only are we being reminded that everything is in our heads, and so to kind of like keep that in mind as we move forward in our building, but that what we are building in the future, this whole cycle that we thought was going to be something so much more physical and tangible, like I said, like stone, this is giving me this feeling of like rocks and boulders. Like we used to have this concept of things being so definitively tangible, where what we're finding through this entire process is that what we are meant to build is actually something much the idea I just got in my head was like much, like almost like how Mercury is, like much more flexible, fluid, it's energetic, it's crystalline in that way. Crystals have high frequencies because of their vibrations, and depending on the crystal, they vibrate at higher and higher frequencies, much more than like a solid set stone would. And so it's giving that idea like that we've evolved and come to a much higher vibration, where like now our basis isn't back in this it took all of this to get us to this point, but we reestablished a new foundation. And now we're here to this point where like all of that is now behind us and completely just going away because it's not necessary in what we're moving forward into. And I would like to point out that there's no more quarters. So this concept of value is also going away. This concept of like the higher the number, the more valuable it is. The bigger that it is, the more valuable it is. Like those things don't exist anymore. In fact, the smallest coin we have moving forward is this dime at the end, and that's the smallest coin. It's also the most valuable. So we're moving away from these older concepts, which is kind of what this is saying too. This is a penny in the reverse, not in the reverse, but on its back, right? We've got the back side of it, but it's on its side and it's pointing towards this, where the foundation of the building is over here and the top of the building is pointed over here. And it's the Lincoln Monument. You can't see him in this one. He's pretty much he's almost all the way completely worn out of this. You can see there's something in there. But unless you knew that it was the Lincoln Monument, it doesn't say that it's the Lincoln Monument either. So unless you knew that it was, and you knew that he was in there, you wouldn't know what the fuck. It would almost look like a weird... There's some entity in there. There's some entity, but it's not a familiar one. But it's in a cage. It's in a cage. It's entrapped in this cage. The foundation of which is the future. The head of which is the past. You take of that what you will. We're moving then into, I don't know how much more time I'm going to have. This is taking longer than I thought. This nickel from 1981. And this guy's a little different. Oh, maybe it's just the first one we've had out on its head. It's the only one that's out on its head. 1981. He is facing In God We Trust. What happened in 1981? Ronald Reagan is shot and injured by John Hinckley Jr. The first recognized case of AIDS begins in the United States. NASA launches Columbia. Pope John Paul is shot. John Paul II and injured. Lots of political stuff going on in 1981. Ronald Reagan had just become president. He was sworn in as president in 81. IBM's personal computer launched. It contained an Intel 8088 processor. Quite interesting. Bette Davis Eyes was the number one song. 3 songs by John Lennon appear on the year-end Hot 100, charting posthumously after his murder in late 1980. Damn. I thought it was in 79, but it was in 80. So the world was really changing. There was a lot of political stuff going on in 1981. This is also when power dressing became a thing, which is like the 80s style that we know of became a trend at this point. The like giant shouldered pads and big chunky jewelry and stuff like that. One more. Raiders of the Lost Ark is the number one movie. Okay. 1981. Okay, so this guy's facing In God we trust. But he's looking directly back at this penny. So this penny, like I said, is like, a dark past that has been processed, continuously gone through and processed again and again and again. And he's looking back on it and trusting God through it. And that's what's allowing him to move forward. There's a lot of politics involved in this. There's a lot of politics to consider. There's a high tension in politics at this time. There's a new leader that's already been shot. There's a pope that's already been shot. So there's a lot going on. And this is directly after John Lennon just got shot. So things are scary at this time. And so it's almost part of that too. It's almost like looking back into the past and what somebody has been through, because like this is the darkest coin out here. So it's like even despite everything that's going on right now, because of everything that we've been through, we're looking back, and because of everything we've been through and everything that we've learned about it, like we're almost using this past as a comparison to be like, no matter what we've been through worse. And like we can take this and we can move forward. However, interestingly enough, the next coin that we have here is 1983, but it's Lincoln. And there's like this, like, I don't know if you can see it. There's like this spot right there on his head. Like being shot in the head. So it's like, while we're looking back in the past and telling ourselves that we've been through worse and that we can handle this, the president gets shot. Only this is Lincoln, so the president gets killed. And the president being, we're talking about a foundation here. So it's not really the actual president. It's this highest concept that we have. Well, and like I said, like we're moving into this period of time too with the Antichrist, right? Like coming up in 1996. There's an idea of 666 is the number of the beast, or the number of the Antichrist in Revelation. So it's what I'm seeing right here is like this is current politics. This is where the concept of the beast comes from, and this is modern, current time, looking back into that, looking at that politically, looking at that time period, looking at that concept of 666, of the Antichrist. And then immediately after this, then this Antichrist gets shot in the head. But they have to get killed. It's Lincoln, and they don't show back up on the board. Right. I don't know. I think that's just like a weird little aside. In Revelation, the Antichrist gets shot and receives a head wound, and then is miraculously healed from it, and everybody marvels at that, and then begins to follow him. I think it's Revelation like 13 something. I don't know. That's in there. So that was the vibe that I was getting. But on a spiritual level, it's looking back and saying, I've already been through stuff, so I can go through worse. Then immediately worse kind of happens, right? getting shot directly in the head. So it's kind of this and killed. So it's kind of, this would be like the ego, or like one's own personal sense of identity, or even one's sense of a savior, I would say, because that was like a big thing. This was during the time that Lincoln was emancipating the slaves, and then he was assassinated. And so it's that, like, that this very thing that, like, you've been working for all this, and then you've come to this, and, like, through all of this, you've come to this idea of, like, okay, this alchemization process has been what's getting me moving forward, and, like, I can make good out of anything, and you're maintaining positive, you're staying positive about it. But then that very concept is murdered. That very concept is taken away, is assassinated. And that which is like this penny here, like it's like that is the foundation that moves back into this alchemization card or coin. Right? I said there's like this entity that we're unaware of. Although we know that it's Lincoln, but Lincoln's dead here, so it's like in his place, right? It's almost like, it's weird that it's going back, but it's after Lincoln's killed, this monument is built, and that moves us forward into this alchemization process. But this monument is really this monument that's built in honor of him through his death is a cage keeping this hidden entity. Which builds into this alchemization that goes back into this feeling of lack. And it would almost be like this back here, this dime that's completely obliterated is like Civil War and the Great Depression, like all the way back then. So it's almost like we're moving backwards, back towards that, to try to get back to when America was great, way back when. But we've already gone through this process to learn like that was not the importance. But there's this time split, right? There's this timeline split, and there's those that are here and there's those that are here. Those that are here are moving backwards. And by the time they get to this, back to this lack mentality, that's the end for them. They're going to move back all the way into that. But those that are moving forward are remaining high up. So those that are able to look back on the past and receive from it something positive because they trust in God, those that keep their trust in God before anything, are moved into this nickel up in the upright. Five senses. The five senses. They're embracing their five senses, and they're moving. So we have the five senses here. The next coin we can see is a 10. So it like doubles. But we're doing this in faith at this point. We have to do this in trust because we don't see it. And this Lincoln down here is actually facing this, which is a mirror. They're a mirror of each other. This nickel is in the reverse from this one. So while the people that are trusting in God are moving forward in faith to trust their five senses to continue moving forward because everything else seems to be going absolutely haywire. These people who have been trusting in a savior outside of themselves are feeling at a loss because, well, so if this is trusting your five senses, they're like doubling down. They're doubling down, double down on trusting what is what they can see with their eyes. They're not trusting their senses, right? They're trusting the matrix, the shallow illusionary reality. I mean, that's what I call it. They're not going deeper to trust themselves. They're still trusting in this. Really, it's this same concept that's all the way back here. They're moving all the way back here. And here, it's this one. They're moving back to the very beginning to trust in these rigid, hard, heavy concepts, right? And they're trying again to do what was done here, which was, we've gone through this entire process to be able to get this nickel right side up, to be able to have a foundation here, and then to build off of it, using our five senses. But what they're doing is the opposite of that. They're creating that valley again. Instead of that mountain, this is the little mountain in the upright, but this is a little valley. And it's because they're being directed by this head wound, by this character that received a head wound, or by this concept of an external savior that could potentially be taken. So this is like a fear. And it's just reestablishing what was already built in fear. But we started it off better because we were able to move through this process. This is actually moving in reverse. Like it's moving into something worse than what we did here. We're not actually moving back into when things were initially started and then moving forward in some right way, because from this point we moved into liberty in the upright and then just learned what that really meant until it became something much more tangible. We're not doing that here. Here we've separated ourselves. We're continuing forward in that division, and we're moving into liberty on its head, on its head, like liberty. Upside down in the reverse. 2013. Sorry, I'm gonna sneeze. Yes. It 2013 encourages you to have faith, trust, and belief in your intuition and intuitive messages, and to be open to guidance from the universe. It centers around creativity and expression. It's a sign to be open and honest with yourself. So although everything seems a bit dire for those down here, because they're not even sending themselves back here, they're sending themselves into a place where they're going to be a bit confused. However, ultimately, this is a portal, right? And this is the only one that stands. So these are converging into this one. And it's been split now. So like this, they were working together. They split after this happened. After this head wound happened, they split for some reason. And now they're pretty much working to embrace They're both working to embrace the honesty and the truth of themselves. The truth of these are that they are heavy, dense, materialistic. Like, we're talking about this, we're talking about they're fundamentally not just grounded, but like chained to tradition, where because we've trusted our five senses, then we're moving forward into this liberty, so that even when everything is on its head, we're still seeing liberty. That says liberty, and he's pointing at it and he's facing it. We're still looking forward. We're still seeing liberty. But we're no longer, these up here are no longer defining it, this way. We've learned to define it this way. These people kind of miss that process. And that's why they separated. And so although it's converging, it's still going to look two separate ways. I mean, there's two sides to this coin. But like I said, the concept of both as well, where like there's two sides of this coin, but we're actually only looking at the one side. But the one side, even of itself, can be up this way or it can be down this way, right? And so this is like coming to the head. This is coming to a head. This is coming from a body. This becomes the body. Or this becomes the head, but this is removed. The head is removed. And the head is all that we see. That's just for right now as we look forward into the future. And ultimately, like I said at the very beginning, this is really just a cycle. A very long, drawn-out cycle. So this has happened likely before and will likely happen again. It might not look exactly like this at all, but the nature of this is that it all kind of comes back full circle. They're all circles. They're all circles. It all comes back full circle, always. So there's nothing to fear here. This has just been a process of learning for those that are willing to learn. But ultimately, at the end of the game, both the king and the queen and the pawns and the knights and the, what's it called? Priests, I forget what they're called in chess. All of them are pawns. They all go back into the same box. All of the pieces go back into the same box. We all end up in the same place. It's just, are you doing this for you so that you can enjoy your experience, so that you can get something out of it? Or are you just blinded to those things and choosing to embrace suffering and, feeling like life is worthless? Because if you feel that way and continue to validate that, it will be the case for you. But if you feel like even the smallest things, even the hardest things, hold value to you, those things will help build you into a point of resonating much higher and being able to enjoy things much deeper and for much longer. I've gone through bouts where I wanted everything to end, and then I've gone through bouts where I realized that, I've gone through bouts of wanting eternal life, I've gone through bouts of wanting everything to end, and I've gone through bouts of balancing them out to where I don't even believe that any of it exists, really. But because of that, like, the most important thing is just to appreciate what you have, to make the most of what you have, to be able to enjoy it. That's everything. Go watch Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because that explains it. But the best thing in life is just to enjoy it. Just to enjoy it. But this is nice. It's nice to have learned the process. Hopefully this was beneficial to you. Hopefully this has been a bit of a healing process for you. And that you can apply these sorts of things. It was really fun for me. I've never done this using coins. I just knew that I could using anything. So it's fun to be able to do this. Hopefully you've learned from that too. That you can use anything and to your benefit. You can use anything to your benefit, however you choose to. You just got to know yourself, so that you can know what it is that you're working with. It's always going to be you. All right, so that's what I got for you, and I will see you in the next one.